Hi, this is Deborah Clutter. I hope everybody's doing good today. I'm filming this on Christmas Eve, so if I don't see you, have a nice Christmas, and you'll probably see this video after Christmas. In this video, though, we're not going to be talking about piecing it. We're just going to be talking about how to apply this chenille to the quilt. So this is cotton fabric that has been cut on the diagonal. And then I sewed it down on the long arm, and then I took a wire brush to it and I frayed it so that it looks like it does in this video. So I used a 1/2 inch bias binding, and you can make those. It's super easy. You know, you take a square and fold it on the diagonal and then cut it and then sew those two pieces together. There's all kinds of videos on how to do that, to make your own bias binding. And you just need to cut them into 1/2 inch strips. You don't need to sew them together, just cut them up, and then you can use them on your quilt. It was easy to put it on the quilt itself and then, you know, kind of fray it as I go, but it is a lot more work than using the yarn. I do like the way it looks. It is really pretty. It's just a little bit more time consuming. And then I used 3/4 of an inch bias binding on the edge of the quilt. So I went and serged the quilt, and then I sewed 2 layers of bias binding on the edge of the quilt on both sides. Now I did kind of join them together, like just overlapping them and just joining the 2 layers together, and I kind of sewed them up into a big old long strip, and it made it easier to put it on the quilt. It took me hours though to fray the edge, and it was a lot of work, and so probably won't do that again. I mean, it looks nice, it feels nice. It's just a lot of work. So, you know, if you're gonna do this, do it for somebody special. You can buy this bias binding from a company, and it's called Chenille, and I'll put a link in the description, so if you want to check them out. It's $14.99 for the 5/8 of it, or 3/8 of an inch binding. That is 25 yards. I used probably 40 yards on this quilt, so you would need 2. And then I don't know how much I used for the edge, but it was a lot. So yeah, it's a little bit cheaper to make your own, but you know, it takes a while to cut 1/2 inch and 3/4 of an inch binding, no matter what you do. One's going to cost you more, one's going to take more time. Either way, you're still going to have to fray it before you wash it. So at the end of the video, I'll show you what the whole quilt looks like. So there's a lady that has a video, and she does a really good job. She sells the bias tape. You can buy it. It's called Chenille. I didn't have any, so I made some because yeah, I wasn't going to wait until I got here before I tried this out. So here is my bias tape I made last night. I think this is a 1/2 yard. I got about almost 20 yards of bias tape, and I made mine about 1/2 inch. She has 3/8 of an inch bias tape that she sells, and then she also sells 5/8 of an inch bias tape. So I'm going to buy some and try it out. It's like $15 for 25 yards of the 3/8 of an inch bias tape. I don't know how much it's going to take to put on a quilt, so this is my test to see how many yards it's going to take, you know, to finish my quilt. Now, the thing I did learn is I don't need to make this all in one big old long strip like I did last night, which took me forever. You're going to just cut it up anyway. So just take your bias strip, you know, make a triangle, sew the triangles together. There's plenty of videos out there that show you how to do that. And then you're just going to cut your strips from here. Don't bother sewing them together. You can just piece them together on the long arm. if you're going to do it that way. If you want to do it the easy way, you go buy hers, chenille it, and then you use that. So I'll kind of show you what I'm doing, and hopefully it turns out nice. You know, this is an experiment, but I kind of like this quilt that I pieced this morning, so I'm hoping it turns out good. So let me show you what it looks like. Okay, so here's my quilt I made this morning, and I'm just laying the bias tape down on the seams and then sewing straight down the seam. I did make my stitch length about 14 so that it has a nice tight stitch length for this. And I did drop my belts so that I could stitch down there. Now I took a little wire brush, and this one is well used, but and kind of ruffled it up so you could kind of see what it looks like. Okay, I want to show you where I'm at. Let me move my long arm. So this is what I've gotten done so far. I think the little frayed chenille looks really good. So I did go through and ruffle mine all up because I did a sample, and in the sample I threw it in the wash and figured out I had to ruffle it up afterwards because my washer doesn't agitate enough. So, and this is kind of helping because I can find spots that I didn't do too well, and then I can add a piece like I have over here right next to it. So I can add that piece and then just go and brush it in, and you can't even tell. And then I can cover up where I, didn't quite cover the seam. And so that looks pretty good. I've had to do that in more places than I'd like. As you can see, I did a different color for my hearts. And right here around this bee, I didn't do a very good job of getting it all the way around, so I don't know, I might put some more to cover that up. But I think it looks pretty good so far. So my quilt is all finished, and I'm getting ready to cut it off the frame. And a couple of things that I found out is I actually like putting the binding, or the binding that I don't even know what to call it, the chenille binding. I like doubling it up. It looked better than if I just put a single layer. I ended up having to go over quite a few of them because it wasn't covering the seam properly. And I was missing the seam a lot. This definitely took a lot longer than the yarn. It was an experiment and an adventure, and I hope it looks great when we take it off the frame. So let's get started. I am cutting it kind of close to the edge because the edges are not even. And so when I go to square this up, I want to see where the edges are. I found that works better. So I'm using an old sheet. It's a really soft old sheet. And on the back, and I used two different colors of thread. I used gray on the top, and I used some kind of taupey brown color for the back so that it would match the back and blend in, and it worked fine. I didn't have any problems. I think they were close enough in color that it didn't really have any effect, but I think it turned out good. All right, so I used every inch of this that I could. So it was actually pretty close to the edges, and let me reposition my camera real quick and I'll show you the whole quilt. Okay, I think I can get far enough away that I can actually pick this up and show you. Uh-oh. So here's the front. So here's what the whole quilt looks like after it's finished. And I think it turned out really good. I like all the applique. So I did use a different color to go around the hearts. And it kind of, you know, distorts the hearts a little bit. But I still think it looks really good. And here's a close-up of the chenille on the edge. And this is what it looks like on the quilt. So I have some embroidery blocks on here, some regular blocks, an orphan block, and you know, a bunch of hearts and some other stuff. I put my initial, a little bee my daughter-in-law had drawn and I digitized, and I think that's about it. There's a couple of paper piece blocks on here, but mostly this quilt is all pinks, a lot of pinks, and this is what the back looks like. So you can't really see. This is where everything is joined together. And you can kind of, you know, you have to look really close, but when you're looking at it overall, it doesn't show. So I made sure I used something that matched the back, and then I used gray for the front. So I hope you give this a try. These are really fun to make. Like I said in the beginning, I probably won't do the chenille again, but I'm keeping this one. Thanks.